Oh, welcome back. This is Chad Everett Broshears. I'm the host, and just sharing some insights. So, yeah, I just keep reminding myself as I go through the day and every day, from the start till the moment I fall asleep. Really, just the differences in people and perspectives and where they are with their maturity levels and then how things work. And by the way, when I say where they are with their maturity levels, I don't mean that in any way like an insult. It's not a weaponized word for me. It's very rare would I ever use that in a way that would be intentional to be a weaponized thing, but it's more of a descriptor. Where is somebody in their development? So if somebody is highly immature, it tells me that there's something they're doing that's acting out that I'm witnessing, and that they're expressing their level of abilities. And that moment, we usually when we see something that's less than adult level mature in an adult, we typically give them less value of stability or support or whatever it might be. Sometimes we may recognize it as being fun because we may be overly attendant to a particular part of development. Perhaps we're just knuckling down for more financial growth, which is financial maturity, and we're so far into that mindset that in that reality we become obsessed. And obsessed being that little to nothing else can exist in thought that does not accommodate the thing that we're obsessed by. Like really focused or hyper focused on this thing. That hyper focus can turn into the realm of obsessed, but that's something that it's hard for another person to qualify it for you because of your priorities, your goals, why you're up to what you're doing, what skills you have that support what you're doing, and what you really intend to see as an outcome that may not necessarily settle into the concepts of a goal as much as just something that sits out there for the people that are a little hesitant to associate what they're doing to the goal. So we refer to that behavior when where they're caught up in a behavior that elicits something that reminds you of maybe an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, or somewhere below their physical or chronological age. So you say this person's like this. So if somebody acts out and they're a goofball, and you have a big business conversation coming up, perhaps it's something that has to do with a merger or an acquisition or something along those lines, you don't want the goofball representing your company in at that moment of real deep seriousness. And if they can't be serious, it makes it seem as if it's not that valuable to the people involved. So therefore you wouldn't want the person that has a high degree of humor developed in them, but little stress value capacity. So then you say, okay, I'm not going to have this person in the boardroom, if you will, or in the lawyer's office with us. Can't do it. I don't feel safe with it, that kind of thing. I don't feel confident that we'll end up in a good spot for ourselves, or hopefully a good spot for both entities involved, or however many entities are involved in this. So when it comes to that observation of somebody being highly immature, that's where I go with it, to that particular level of the spectrum, if you will. I wouldn't want the President of the United States goofing off and making jokes and a catastrophe, right? Let's say an orphanage burnt down and there were children inside. It's just this horrible, horrible scenario, and then have a president laughing, when they're asked about it. That would be something that obviously would really diminish your value on that, or you would have a level of maturity similar to that of which you're witnessing. So if you do find it funny, then it's probably associated with dark humor. Well, that is associated with dark humor that can be trauma-induced from a different period of life, although I'm not the biggest fan of overutilizing specific language that seems to be a bit more hyperbolic in today's society. Like trauma is used by everybody now, pretty much. Racism is used by everybody. Whatever. There's just all these nonsensical terms now that used to have depth of meaning before. But anyway, not to digress any further, but I wouldn't want my representative of this country to behave that way in a situation like that. It would mean that, to me, they wouldn't really take it seriously to try to help the people that were involved in that, anybody associated with that orphanage. So put it that way, okay? So whenever it comes to immaturity, or they're being really immature, it's not a weaponized thing for me. It's just it's a descriptor for a specific behavior with the intention of communicating with the greatest depth of impact of communication. That would be the reason for it. So we have 8 different areas of maturity. I know I continue to say this, and I will give every one of the areas of maturity in a ebook setup. In the near future, I'll be writing these things so that you at least have the introduction to them, so you have something that you can start quantifying for yourself. And I'll make sure you're aware of how to access that in the very near future. But as it stands right now, I'll just go through an individual one on the episodes and the videos to try to just create better, different insight, if you will. Not necessarily better, but different insights. Perhaps it is better because it gives you ability in a situation that you don't feel that there's much more opportunity in it. You feel backed into a corner, if you will. That's my goal with this, is to change up perspectives enough. I don't want to come from this is right or wrong, because I can't gauge that based off of the goals that you have in life, which is how that would actually be better served. I can't do it. I can only give you advice from where I'm at and my goals and how I'm developed, the way that I see the world. And if I give you advice, even though it actually is the right advice, it may not be heard in the right way, or it might be given to you in a way that you don't have the structural or foundational values to be able to utilize that advice properly. Even if you comprehend it, you still can't execute it, and then that can feel like a greater torture than it is to be given just insights from my perspective and let you mold yourself into what you see and how you experience it. So get back on that. It's advice like that. So whenever I do speak about different degrees of maturity and things like that, I am trying to speak from insightfulness, not a prescription, if you will, to change your life. It's an opportunity for you to ascribe to a way of seeing and experiencing something, and to see how much that warrants change in your life, and how much it warrants a sensation of foundational stability or workability in these types of challenging moments when you feel like you have no option. You have little opportunity to do much of anything. With that, today I'm going to focus on community maturity. And community maturity is an interesting thing. It does have to do with friendships. It has to do with your family. It has to do with the society that you're in, where you play your role in that society. Some of that is close-knit groups, neighborhoods, places like that. And to see how that's associated with a sense of satisfaction in life. Now, for me, I don't believe life is about being happy. I don't ascribe to that belief system. I actually, once upon a time, was a pretty significant optimist, but I have chosen that is not the most desirable worldview to maintain when it's inauthentic, and not to force my way in through situations, repeating a mantra that things will be better or whatever. I don't really need that. I have a stronger constitution than to create a delusional idea, not to use that as a negative or some sort of slight against people that do. It just says something about their constitution, and the constitution of themselves that can be developed and create more independence. But in that moment, they're not independent, they're dependent, when they have to continuously repeat the mantra that things are just going to get better. The truth is, based on how you perceive the views that you have in life, the way that events occur, those things you'll have better when it lines up for you, but might be worse for another because of the way that the wheel of fate turns, if you will, or the wheel of the economy, or the wheel of whatever the particular thing is that you're finding fortune in. It's often that not all people win when the wheel of it turns. It's just a select amount of people that are prepared and in the right situation, whether that's location on the planet, or if it's the right mental faculties or developmental faculties necessary to truly engage with the opportunity in a way that you can feel significant benefit. So that's the values that I have whenever it comes to how do you see the world? Do you want to see it optimistically or pessimistically? Typically what I see and hear whenever somebody has that I'm a pessimist perspective, which is less common because that's more of a social pariah. If you make that declaration, people almost treat you like you have an ideological leprosy. They want to stay away from it because they don't want it to be contagious and then they themselves be infected by it, which also again shows their constitution, which is their fortitude within themselves. Realists, sometimes we get to the point of what's referred to in the scientific method as naive realism. So you find yourself wanting to believe that something is real, and because you want it to be so much, or that you are so inexperienced in it, that you get to this point of being naive about how real something is. Easy example of that would be what you convince yourself of however long ago in your life, that you've had a revelation that you realize that something was actually different about it. You can use interpersonal relationships in this way, where you've made up a determination about somebody's statement or behavior that you were engaged with to some degree, and you decided that why it happened, what happened, and then the outcome of that thing that happened had a specific definition or an outcome that was concrete to you, was fact. And then later you found out from more information, or whether that's inward, and you found it looking in, or if you found it in the conversations with other people or situations that were similar to what you went through, you experience again, but this time, for whatever reason, your perspectives were different. Then you align the past with the present and say, perhaps maybe I made the wrong call on that before. But that be that, where you thought it was real, now it's no longer, but you thought it was real based off of a naivete, a degree of exposure and maturity that you had prior has now exceeded that, and you can look back and say, wow, I was actually wrong about that. And that's what it's the naive realism, if you will. It's better to look at it that way than just try to fabricate it some other way in front of you. So, all right, so with that, I don't fit into those categories where, oh, you're an optimist, a pessimist, or a realist. For me, you mentally position, or I mentally position myself in what is the best outcome in the situation or circumstance. But I try to put all of those three values into one particular conversation when there's something that I want to associate optimism, pessimism, and realism to. So I put those in, and then I play that, and it's actually fairly quick. When I do this, is optimistically, what do I attach myself as an outcome? Pessimistically, what could happen that would deter from that, or that could change that outcome or affect that outcome? And use that as a way of trying to re-gauge myself back into the optimist outcome, or the desirable outcome, but using a more realistic perspective now that I've combined the two into this realistic position. And then I have to ask myself, based off what I currently know and my previous experiences, could that also be here in this moment? Now, that doesn't mean I change the desired my behavior at that moment. It just lets me know, put a pin on this for the moment, follow this. You're going to use it as a moment in time that is another gauge against future decisions, or during future decisions. So that falls into and I titled this when I said it was going to be about community, and this truly is about community. It's just giving a lot more depth to a side and believe in, and the authorities that we avoid or we disagree with. It doesn't mean that even if you disagree with them, they're still an authority, and there's a deep level of distinction to what an authority has over you, even if you don't agree with them and you prefer they not be your authority. But you still understand, like cops and the people that don't like cops, they still have to abide by the rules, or they get punished whether they like cops or not. And what's interesting also is that people that don't like cops, take out the bad apples that are always in any group of people. Now, what cops are really doing is they're enforcing the laws that were written by other people, not by themselves. They didn't write those laws. They're servicing those laws. They're enforcing. So, just something to consider whenever you yourself may say, you know what, the police are corrupt, even the police are bad. First default position is there are people that are corrupt, or that behave in a very selfish and or narcissistic way that only want to see the better for themselves at anyone else's cost. And then you can say, okay, well, those people are in every group, and I've seen them with the people that I align with, and or possibly I've been in that same situation because I was so immature in that situation that that's how I was perceived, or I realized that was my behavior. So not all cops are bad. They're just servicing what the laws that have been written. Of course, again, and I don't like to do disclaimers too often, but this is because it's such a touchy subject, and people are so polarized in the way that they think. They don't use logic, they just use emotion based off of pre-existing downloads that they've had, personal experiences and or other people's experiences, anecdotal and or what has been told to them as fact, that may not necessarily be fact because it's in the propaganda values. So there are bad apples, then there are the laws that are written, and the people that we really should be focusing on in that type of scenario is who is writing the laws and why are they writing them, who benefits and who loses. So that goes closer to the origin of the idea that now we have to service and to allow into the society that we live within, whether that's immediate community or the bigger community, the national level, if you will. So, viewing different perspectives and how do you deal with associating preset conclusions into groups of individuals, because that plays a role in your community and the maturity that you have in that community. There are always going to be people, since antiquity we've had this, and predating antiquity I'm sure, we've had people that will mislead in order to personally gain. It is a maturity factor, but it can be so mature that it looks what we would refer to as professional versus amateur. The amateur are the ones that we commonly associate, we find, and then we can do something about that. Finding them by saying, hey, this person's outed now because of this behavior, look at the contradictions, therefore, and others agree with you along the way, but you have come to a conclusion, conviction, that the person is immature and or damagingly selfish, if you will. There's collateral damage in their selfishness that they very well may not be aware of, or they are aware of. If they're aware of, then we start looking closer to the ideas of evil with those individuals. There has been a population value of that. They're fairly small in the population based off of psychology, best I recall. It's about 1 to 3% of the population suffer with psychosis. And about, I want to say that could be correct, and I haven't done an update for 2024 or even 2023, but this is previous to that, and that's relying on memory here. But that's how you start associating yourself with community, and you start aligning yourself with, as you get more mature, you start to realize that those that you surround yourself with become a reflection of who you are, both in the conditioning that they give you to that influences your development and your personality, but also to the level that others gauge you by based off the people you are associating with. So whatever traits that they're known for and you associate with them, there's an increased potential that people judging you now based off the judgment they had for somebody else that's close to you. You might inherit that behavior without actually being that way. And that person that is being judged and a specific behavior, that behavior was previously set. Now, how long ago was it set? What kind of work did they do on themselves to develop to the point that they may no longer share that trait, or they develop that trait into another thing, the caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. We all have that ability. We just don't give others the privilege of that. Often we don't quantify it. We just occasionally get the idea and then let them exist in that space. What I'm giving as this series goes on is the ability to sit in that awareness and to be able to use it in a way that develops for the betterment for everyone. But it will take time. In the earlier stages of this, it may come across being very selfish to other people because other people are involved in the community, right? Well, your community will want to hold you in the position that you are known for. So if you're known for specific traits, your community is going to want to hold you into that position to some degree. And there will be variables of punishment and reward for change in behavior depending on who you're interacting with, what they know you're doing, and to what their goals are for themselves as well as maybe the relationship you have with them. So that's the concepts in community and why it can be so hard to make changes, because others want to push you back into what they've known you to be and or keep you in that box. And it could also, making changes in your life can remind them of what they have not done. So therefore, subconsciously, they may move to, very rarely do I find that it's actually a conscious decision to say this, this person's making these changes and I don't know why they're doing it, but, or I know why they're doing it and I don't want them to do it. That's typically more intimate relationships where the person's partner might be wanting to change and grow, and because they're not, they feel like they're going to be outpaced and no longer seen as a suitable mate or a suitable partner for them, and they may not have either the knowledge, the courage, or the resources to make those changes, so therefore they would rather hold their partner back than proactively help support them. Those would be the conscious decision sides of it, or closer to the conscious decision and not so much of the subconscious, if you will, but I would still say it's born in the subconscious mind in some way. But for people that are in that not so intimate relationship with you, they very likely may not realize why they're doing it, and it falls more to that subconscious level. But people don't like to be reminded of their failures unless they are developed in a way that they see their failures as opportunity. But if they see their failures as something of shame, they're likely to want to avoid it and to be upset when it's exposed. Versus when it's exposed, you see opportunities to grow and develop and to be able to say, hey, that's what's going on over there, and if I want to change the outcome over there to what I'm experiencing, then, or end the way that I'm experiencing it, then I need to change these variables or address these things. And then you get into the inquiry of change and development, purpose of growth. So, again, with these maturity values and community, it truly has such an incredibly beautiful, deep opportunity if you choose that development is more preferable over shame and or righteousness. No, because righteousness is another thing that it gets so aggressive, and that can come out of hyper-focus in one area of growth, or an area of growth that gives somebody so much feeling of purpose that they become rigid, because righteous and rigid are, they're rigid is included in righteousness. So that's a descriptor for the term. Often, I can't think of any situations where rigidness is not inside of righteousness. Usually it would make a reference to somebody who is highly developed in the area, passionate and purposeful about it, but yet still hears you out and doesn't try to change who you are in order to meet that level of tension that they now have in that area, or that they have had in that area of trait values or insights or views of the world. So, again, this is, and I want to make sure that this stays consistent on the point of community. As you continue on through this series and the foregoing videos, even after the series is over, I want you to be able to see how they all interconnect in a very holistic or a cybernetic way, if you will, meaning multiple different systems working together. So holistic is the same concepts in its own way, but right. That's why it may sound in the beginning, as you get used to, or as you're introduced to these videos and how I think, you may look at it that I'm kind of like tangent a lot. But the reality is this isn't necessarily tangenting as much as it is how my thinking process flows through the different areas of maturity for better understanding on my part, so that I can try to help increase the developmental opportunities for others. Go through it in a righteous way if somebody's not prepared or not ready for that growth, whether it's a psychological, emotional abilities, or if it's their resources and structure that they have that may not be ready for that growth. And I may, talk about it, but yet, caution against, taking action until these other things are addressed. So again, I'm not a therapist. I have no interest in being that. I don't want to be titled that. I don't want that associated with me. I just have a transformational education that I'm offering the world. Just insight-based to whatever degree. Pardon. Woo! The sun got me. Oh my goodness, bless me. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close off the video for now. I'm getting into some decent traffic here, and I want to be as cautious and attentive as possible, and not sound like I'm spacing out in the conversations. Stay tuned. I'll continue. I do plan to make at least 5 videos a week, if not more, and have them published on a daily basis. Right now I'm just kind of ironing out, getting back into this. So just, if you don't mind, bear with me. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends. I want to be able to give you abilities to work your way through growth with your friends, and this is a great way of breaking the ice on it, is introduce and then have conversations around this when you're ready to start your growth process in a way that is very purposeful and strategic. That's what I'm giving in this series, is a purposeful and strategic method to develop yourself. No matter how many times you may have tried and failed, or to whatever modicum of or significance in the success that you have had, we've got 7 other areas likely to address, and then you realize how you need to address back at that one that you've developed in. So with that, thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Chad Everett Broshears, also known as Sir Chad Everett Broshears for some. I look forward to our next conversation. So we've got a world to change, but we need to start with ourselves. So until next time, again, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you.